Okay, so we are now recording and I will start sharing my screen. Thank you for everyone who is attending. Give me just 1 second. Okay, so can everyone see these PowerPoint? Okay, great. So my name is Whitney. I work on the enrollment team here for our online LLM and MSL programs. I'm going to be here in the background, but I am sure I've talked to most of you. Happy to have you here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Janice and Lucy, who are the directors of the program. Feel free to chime in via raising your hand or in the chat box with any questions. We'll also have some time at the end to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Whitney, and welcome to all of you who are joining us live this evening, and to those of you who will be watching this as a recording later. My name is Janice Weiss, and I am the Associate Dean and Director of the Environmental Law Program at Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland. And along with Lucy Brem, whom you'll meet in just a moment, together, we oversee the LLM and Master's MSL programs in environmental law here at Lewis and Clark, both the in-person versions and, of course, the online versions, which we are going to focus on this evening. I'm going to start with the first couple slides, and then I'll turn it over to Lucy to introduce herself and take on some slides. So first, let me just set the stage for the two types of degrees that we offer outside of our JD law degree, which of course we also offer. So many of you may be interested in the LLM. That, of course, is for students who already have their law degree from an international law school or a U.S. law school, and are looking to focus their legal career on environmental law, or to highlight or further an environmental career that they may already have started. Then our MSL program, that stands for Master of Studies of Law. We call it the Master's Program for short. That is for students who don't want to go to law school, don't necessarily want to go to court and represent clients and be a lawyer, but who feel that knowledge of environmental law and policy would benefit them in their professional development in the environmental field. And we will be talking about both of those degrees and the advantages of them tonight. So just a couple of quick facts about the degree programs, and you can see the information on the slide we have present here. We offer these programs both to students in the United States, and then, of course, you can be anywhere in the world. That's the beauty, of course, of the online method. So US students complete 26 credit hours for the LLM program and the master's. To give you some context of what that means, most of our online courses are 3 credit classes. We have some classes that are 2 credits, but most are in that 3 credit vein with some that are 2. So that gives you just a sense when we're talking about these total credit hours. If you're an international student, you complete 28 credits because we have a special introductory course that we add on for those students to help them be quite successful in studying in our program. And the master's students total is also 26 credits. We try to require just a couple of courses in order to let you then choose the courses of interest to you from our elective menu. So the courses that are required are administrative law, which many of you know is a core foundational course for the study of environmental law. It addresses the role that agencies play in their rulemaking for environmental law. So very important to understand the basics of administrative law. And the other required course is environmental law, which is our overview, bird's eye view, if you will, of environmental law to really set a nice context for your studies. Now, if you are an LLM student and you already took administrative law or environmental law or both as a law student, you do not have to repeat them. They'd only be required if you hadn't taken them or if it had been some time since you'd taken them and we mutually decided it would probably be a great idea to take them again. We do have a special course that we have designed for our LLM students. We call that class Emerging Topics, and it's a hot issues class where we look into what's happening in the Supreme Court, what's the latest EPA rule, what's happening in different policy and legal arenas. Really a fun, dynamic class where LLM students really get to explore and express opinions on issues as they're literally emerging. That includes our in-person LLM students. So it's kind of a fun way for the in-person and online LLMs to develop a professional relationship. We also invite any master's student who'd like to join us in emerging topics to take that class if they want. And then moving on to one additional required class, Lucy teaches an excellent preparatory class called Introduction to U.S. Environmental Law and Legal Studies. And we require that for our master's students and for our international LLMs. It's just a great way to get some important information about U.S. law study and basics of environmental law as a preface to moving into the courses. And then international students can choose to take administrative law if they want, but it's not required. And then most of you would be taking 100% environmental credits, but some of our students like to explore and are welcome to explore some of our non-environmental courses. And we don't offer those online, but some of the courses here on campus are via Zoom. Or if you happen to be in the Portland area and you're pursuing the online degree, you may be able to pop onto campus to take one of our classes. So just a note that at least 18 of your credits must be in environmental law. For most of our students, it's pretty much all of them. So that's the basic structure, of the two degrees, just to give you a sense of how many credits and the type of coursework that we're offering. We'll talk a bit later about the other courses that we offer because we, of course, know that's of interest to you. We try to keep our website current on what classes are coming up, what classes we offer. So you should always feel free to get a good sense of our curriculum and course descriptions for the online classes on our website. So with that, Whitney, I'm going to move to the next slide on hiring trends. Great, thank you. So one of the things we really wanted to focus in on in this particular webinar is what we'll call return on investment, and I'll talk about that next. But related to that is hiring trends, because of course, one of the big questions on your minds is and should be, what will I get out of the master's degree? What will I get out of the LLM degree? Obviously, a very important question and something you should explore as part of your decision as to whether it's a good investment of your time and resources to see if that works for you. So one of the things we just wanted to highlight in this slide is what we're seeing in terms of hiring trends for environmental law and policy jobs, meaning both for master's graduates of our program and LLM graduates of our program. I want to say as an overview that, as many of you probably know, environmental law and policy is what we call a steady field, a steady discipline. There are other fields of law that have trends where there's something new and huge going on, and lots of things are happening, and then it kind of falls, in a different direction, and it's sort of up and down. Healthcare can be like that, for example, depending on what's happening. It can be a really hot field and then not so hot. So the good thing about environmental law is it's steady. It has been around for quite some time. The environmental statutes are on the books, being enforced, being used. And so I first want to say that it's the kind of field that holds its own. We don't necessarily have crazy spikes, and we don't have sort of the drops that other fields might have and experience. But with that, there are some current trends within the environmental law field that are just interesting to note. Of course, one of those is the increasing focus on climate change. And of course, that covers so many different things. If you're interested in climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation, climate change policy, renewable energy, how do we decarbonize our current energy sector? Those are all, very much trends that we're seeing in hiring. Almost every law firm, nonprofit, government entity has a high need for people interested in climate change. It's, of course, the issue, of our time. And then, of course, related to climate change is everything else in environmental law. Climate change, of course, is leading to scarcity issues in terms of water, resources. Wildlife are being impacted by changes in our climate. Forestry is being impacted by changes in our climate. So to the extent that you have a passion for ocean and coastal issues, or water law, or land use, or forestry issues, all of that is very viable areas, and of course will ever increasingly include how to be creative and nimble in those fields in a changing climate. So lots of interesting jobs and positions out there. And then, of course, we cover, we have alums interested in and working in the private sector. The Securities Exchange Commission has regulations requiring climate disclosures of companies. And the companies are scrambling to find people with expertise and interest in helping them make those kinds of climate change disclosures. And that's a really new and emerging field if you're interested in sort of internal help to businesses who need to and want to comply with these important regulations. Of course, environmental justice and environmental equity is really creating some space for professionals who are interested in working with communities who have disproportionate impacts from air pollution, land pollution, food deserts, those sorts of issues. We're seeing always a highlight and importance in the environmental justice area. And then, of course, related to climate change, but its own separate interest as well is our environmental regulations and statutes were developed in the late 60s, early 70s, and they've worked fine on many levels, but may not be keeping up with dramatic big issues like climate change. And so there's interesting opportunities to really work on how do we improve or redesign some of our bedrock environmental laws. So that can be done through policy work, legislative work, litigation, all kinds of things in sort of really re-looking at our regulatory system. The environmental law field covers really all the sectors that you might think of. Our alums are in government positions, nonprofit advocacy positions, NGOs, city, state, and federal legislatures, educational institutions and colleges. We have journalists who are graduates of our program, really across the board. In other words, we don't prepare students to just work in government positions or to just be in an NGO. You'd have the opportunity to explore positions, within the sectors that are present in environmental law. And then finally, Lucy and I thought it was important to mention sustainability, obviously an often used buzzword, but many companies and organizations are taking their interest in sustainability quite seriously and looking for legal and policy professionals that can help them design sustainable policies, whether it's in their manufacturing part of things, their communications, how their bylaws are written, how they work within the built environment. So we thought it was important to mention, we certainly are seeing that as a continuing and very strong trend. I will also mention geographically, there are differences as to what is a trend in the West versus the Midwest versus the East Coast. And we're happy to get into specifics about that if you have particular geographic areas that you're really focused on. Obviously, in the West here, we're dealing with water shortages, which are spreading in lots of different regions, but certainly a big issue here. Hazardous waste issues tend to be across the country. But of course, different regions of the country and the world have additional trends or areas that are really popular in that particular area. So next slide, Whitney. So I want to tag on to then the idea of what opportunities might be available to graduates, to drill down a little bit more on what we would call the return, on investment. In other words, if you're coming to this program, you obviously have a passion for environmental issues, perhaps even a particular area, again, ocean and coastal or public lands or pollution regulation. And so it's important to talk about what we're seeing in terms of a return on that investment for graduates from the program. Typically, many people who come to the programs are doing something else, and they really want to pivot to make their career more fully into environmental law or policy. And so they're going to signal really to the job market, to prospective employers, that they're very serious about pivoting and moving into this field by getting this degree that's going to prepare them, for that. Some of our students do have really good experience in environmental law or policy, And they might then use this degree to enhance that knowledge, to bulk up their knowledge, or to add additional areas of strength to their portfolio. So just a couple of things to point out. Obviously, one of the great benefits in doing this program online is that it allows our students to work. If you have a job already, you don't have to pack up and move to Portland, which we know is a challenge. It can be an obstacle for many students. So you can continue to earn income while taking the online program, as opposed to trying to come in person and doing the entire program full time, which would obviously make that a bit more challenging. Or to get a job, while you are doing the program online. We've designed it to allow for that sort of time, which is nice because if you're earning income, then you can limit the amount of student debt that you might need to incur, which we are very happy to support, and would want to work with each student on a good plan. The other advantages that we're seeing in sort of feedback that we get from employers who've hired our students and our students as they're in the job search phase, the prospective employers really appreciate the expertise in the field. And this may be obvious, particularly to those of you who've been to law school, but you will understand how to dissect and interpret almost any environmental statute that might get thrown at you in the workplace, because you will have developed an expertise in breaking down the statute, how it's interpreted, how courts have interpreted it, how agencies have interpreted it. And employers appreciate having that ability to really analyze and dissect environmental statutes. I mentioned this already, but getting this degree does really signal to a potential employer that you're committed to this field. You're not just interested in it, you are willing to get a serious degree in the field. And prospective employers have been impressed with that level of commitment from our alums. And we work with you to describe that really well in your cover letters. And again, the flexibility of an online program allows you to take classes from our amazing professors. They are the same professors that you would have if you were here in person. So that's pretty great. You are taking classes from our wonderful team of professors, but in a very flexible environment. You can take the number of classes that you want in any given semester, stretch the program out to be flexible to meet your needs. Again, I mentioned it's nice to limit the amount of debt if you can continue to work. And related to that, we charge tuition for both of these programs by the credit, as opposed to a set amount like you may have had in other academic experiences. So if you are going to take 3 credits in any term, one class, for example, you would just pay for those 3 credits. In the next semester, you might then want to take 6 credits or 7 credits. And then in the next semester, back it down to 3 credits. And so that allows you to control your costs, your tuition expenses as you go, which lots of our students like that flexibility as well. And then, of course, I think you all know that having a graduate degree maximizes your professional opportunities. It opens doors that we have found very helpful. It's very helpful to have a master's degree. I think many of you know that. You know, in addition to a college degree, a lot of employers in the complicated field of environmental law really appreciate students who have a master's degree. Likewise, the LLM can really be seen as icing on the cake after your JD, because you are focusing exclusively on environmental law as part of that advanced degree. And again, that can really, you know, open doors. So with that, I'm going to have Lucy take over and talk about some of our alums and their successes. You're muted, Lucy. How many times do we hear that every day?
I'm Lucy Brim. I'm the Associate Director of the Environmental Law Program. And thank you, Janice, for that was a wonderful start to our webinar tonight. As she mentioned, I'm going to focus on some of our students' success in finding their dream jobs. And that's just been really fun to watch people blossom in the program and then go on to do what they've always set their heart on doing. So just in general, we thought we would put together this slide about kind of the variety of jobs that our students are getting, both as graduates of the LLM program and the MSL program. So for example, for the Master of Law students, you can see one of our alums is a vice president of environmental policy and strategy at a large corporation. We have someone who's a president of the Land Trust Alliance, assistant attorney generals across the country, attorney at Earth Justice, people working at our Northwest Power Planning Council, Endangered Species Act litigation, staff attorneys at various environmental organizations, and an attorney with NOAA, and many, many more. And I also wanted to say that a lot of these examples are also on our website and many others. So don't feel like you have to write all of this down to remember it, because a lot of this is available on our website. Our Master of Studies students have gone to work or further their career at organizations such as the Bonneville Power Administration here in Portland. We have several graduates who are environmental journalists, either with Bloomberg, or someone is in Michigan. Actually, two of our alums work in Michigan for a newspaper there focusing on environmental issues. One of our MSL grads is a conservation program coordinator with Idaho Wildlife Federation, et cetera, legislative director for Oregon Environmental Council, and you can see many others. Another interesting thing is that we have had teachers come and do the MSL program and then incorporate that into their classes, both the substance and a little bit of the style of law school classes. So that's been fun to see as well. So next slide, please. And now I'll tell you just a little bit more about a few of our more recent alums, so you can see the kinds of things that they are doing in a little more detail. Barack Hamelgard is a recent online LLM graduate. And he had a really interesting background, very successful in business and entertainment law in California, but he just felt this calling to do something to protect the oceans and preserve access to clean water. He had a family. He wanted to do something to show his children how much he cared about these issues. And he did the online LLM program and really took advantage of a lot of the opportunities to get to know the professors and do various activities, and then graduated and really walked right into his dream job with LA Waterkeeper. And he's there fighting for sustainable and equitable water systems, and very, very happy. His story is on our website as well. Franklin Lagat, one of our first online international LLM students from Nairobi, Kenya. He had been working in a organization but felt that he had kind of hit a plateau and that he needed additional training to really dig deeper into environmental issues. And so he worked on this degree while staying in Nairobi and continuing his activities there. We also have an in-depth story about him on our website. He ended up wanting to start his own NGO. And so he worked with a professor here on an independent study, set up an NGO focused on conserving biodiversity and addressing climate change. Austin Watkins, also one of our first, I believe, online LLM grads, is now a land use attorney for the Seattle City Attorney's Office. He was living and working in a small town in Washington. He couldn't move to Portland to do the LM, so this was the perfect opportunity for him. Again, he really took advantage of the flexibility of online learning, got his degree, and then was very happy to be able to move into a job that he's is very much interested in. And now I'll go on to talk about some of our Master of Studies grads. Again, we've seen some real success stories. Morgan Gratzweiser is a Master of Studies grad. She is currently the Deputy Policy Advisor for the Governor on Natural Resources. Morgan is somebody, again, and I would encourage all of you, if you do the program, that really took advantage of getting to know the professors, finding different ways to interact with other students and programs, and was able to leverage that along with some other past job success and experience that she had into this position. Beatrice O'Connor just graduated this last May and moved to Denver and really started looking for jobs from scratch. She kept in contact with both Janice and I, and then was able to be hired just recently for the chair of the Energy and Environment Committee at the Colorado House of Representatives. So she's thrilled. Amanda McKay, another wonderful MSL alum from Northern Washington State. She was hired in her hometown as a program manager for the Pipeline Safety Trust, which is a nonprofit that focuses on safety regulations and issues related to a variety of gas, methane, CO2, et cetera, and is very happy to be able to be back in her hometown and focusing on something that she is really passionate about. So those are just a few stories. Again, I would really encourage you to go to the website, where there are a lot of great examples of what our students are doing after they graduate, and a lot more about the program itself. Finally, I'd like to touch on career services. We have a fantastic office here. The director of the career services is very interested in our LLM and MSL students. She takes it very seriously to help find jobs and be just as involved and invested in finding jobs and careers for LLM and MSL students as for our JD students. You'll have access to all the online resources, including job boards, et cetera, throughout your career. There's a lot of information online and examples of resumes and cover letters, but we also will do individual reviews of those, as will career services staff. We can set up mock interviews, which can be very, very helpful. And especially since a lot of them are on the phone these days, there's some particular things that we like to advise students on what works well in that situation. There are a lot of networking connections. And I'd like to mention here our alumni, which we haven't really focused on so far in this presentation. But we, as you know, from probably what you've seen and talking to Whitney and others, our environmental law program is very well known in the United States and around the world. And our alumni are everywhere, and they are passionate and active and close knit in a lot of cases. We have alumni who constantly share jobs that are coming up in their organization or their business and send them to us and want to make sure that our students see them and that other alums see them. And I just think that's a really, really wonderful thing about Lewis and Clark is our student body is very supportive of each other, and our alums are very supportive of our students just coming out into their professional life. We can help with job search strategy. If you're saying, you know, really want to go into a nonprofit or I want to go into private practice, our career services office and Janice and I can help with that as well as helping you figure out how to research what your options are. So a lot of support, and we realize that that is one of the main reasons you may be doing the LLM or the Master of Studies is to, as Janice said, to pivot into the job that you really want to do. So we do provide quite a bit of support for that as well.
Great. Thanks, Lucy. I'm just going to mention what are the next steps, and then Lucy will talk a little bit more about what we look for in applications. So in terms of next steps, and Whitney, of course, is our frontline wonderful person who helps with these kinds of questions as well. And so don't hesitate to ask any of the three of us more details about your particular situation, or if you have any questions about the application process. But just if you're thinking about the next time that we are accepting applications, we are now beginning to admit students for spring of 2023. Spring classes begin January 9th. And our application deadline for spring is November 15. You can start the program in spring, summer, or fall, any of the three terms that we offer. And as I say, our next available term is spring. So if you're ready to do this, we are now accepting applications for spring. And we accept them, you know, as far in advance as you would like if you're thinking of a different time start. We do highly, highly recommend that if you do plan to apply for federal financial aid, that you complete the FAFSA form. Many of you may have completed this before. And federal loan processing can take some time. And so don't hesitate to fill that out right when you're doing your application materials. You don't need to wait for an offer of admission. Just get all that started at the earliest possible date. That's helpful because then ideally, of course, you'd have a decision about what your financial aid package looks like before you start the program. We also want to mention that in addition to the federal loan program, we do offer scholarships in the form of reduced tuition. So if you're interested in being considered for a reduced tuition scholarship, we have a form for that you can submit with your application. So we want to mention that is available as well. So the actual application documents, we try not to make it too onerous or too complicated. It's pretty straightforward. We have an application form that is specifically for online MSL or LLM folks. That's on our website. And again, Whitney can direct you if you're having any trouble finding that. The statement of interest, which is very, very important. We read those very carefully, which tells us why you're interested in either the LLM or master's program, why you're interested in environmental issues, and how you see the degree helping you in your next steps in your career. Your resume is a great snapshot of what you've done so far. We do need for LLM applicants, JD or LLB transcripts. For masters, the bachelor's degree transcripts. And we know it can take some time and effort to get official transcripts from your schools. So we can accept your unofficial transcript or a copy for application. We will need an official version once you've started here. But in terms of just trying to get things together as quickly as possible, the unofficial is fine. And then 1 to 3 letters of recommendation that demonstrate your capacity to be successful in a graduate level program like this. So that can be from professors, from your previous academic or current academic experiences, employers, supervisors, people with whom you've worked closely, people that know you well and know your passion for environmental issues, and can talk about how they view your success in a program like this. We do ask master's students to submit a short writing sample. And then for international students, a TOEFL with a minimum score of 100, or the IELTS test, or other evidence of English fluency. We are also happy to have phone calls or Zoom conversations with any of you to talk about what might best serve you in your particular application. And now Lucy's going to talk about, once we get all your paperwork, what do we look for?
So Janice and I are both on the committee that looks at the admission applications. And so we have a lot of experience in reading these files. So I can tell you that the things that I'm going to talk about are things that we really do look at and that are important. And of course, there is just the baseline. You have to, for the LLM, you have to have graduated from a US or international law school. So we're looking for a JD or an LLB, sort of law adjacent type general undergrad degrees are not sufficient. And we're looking for, really strong academic records, because this is an academically challenging, in a good way, program. And we want you to be successful if you're admitted. So we're looking for good research skills, good writing skills. And of course, that will be demonstrated in everything from your cover letter to other materials that you provide. We're looking for a genuine interest in environmental law. As Janice mentioned, this is, you're taking 26 credits in environmental law. There may be an occasional time where you're taking something outside that, which is wonderful if you have that opportunity, but we want you to be happy. And our program is focused on environmental, natural resources, and energy law. For the LLMs, bar membership's not required, so don't worry about that. Similar things we're looking for the master's students. Of course, there we're looking for the undergrad degree. It doesn't have to be in any particular subject. We know that people do all kinds of degrees at the undergrad level. And so don't feel like you have to have focused on environmental policy or pre-law or anything like that. We have graduates from probably every, type of major that you can think of. So we're really looking to see, do you have a strong record? Again, do you have good writing skills? And we will see that not for the MSLs, not just from your writing sample, but how you compose your cover letter, et cetera. And again, we're looking for a genuine interest in the subjects that we teach. So I am going to stop there because I would like to allow a lot of time for any questions you may have.
And as Whitney said, feel free to unmute yourself and raise your hand and ask your question, or type it in the Q&A or the chat box. We have a couple of frequently asked questions that we can start with, and then please jump in with any questions that you might have. Or, as we've both mentioned, feel free to reach out to us individually with questions that are, individual to you. One of the questions that we get and may help round out the presentation this evening is the other classes that we offer in the online program. Again, it's on our website. Don't feel like you have to take notes or, make a list, but just to kind of whet your appetite for, what you'd be getting into. We did mention administrative law and environmental law, the emerging topics class, and then Lucy's preparatory introductory class. In addition, we offer, some of these classes are every year and some are every other year, because people, take generally 3 to 4 semesters to complete the program, a little bit less if you take summer school. So the other classes are water law, environmental justice, energy law, hazardous waste, natural resources law and science, ocean and coastal law, international environmental law. And then we also offer a legal research course that focuses on the resources available in environmental law. So that we have found to be a very popular class with our online students who really want to know, how do you conduct legal research in environmental law? What are the resources available? Everything's online now. How do you access what you need? So we have a wonderful professor, the head of our library here, who offers a course in those sorts of tools. The other thing to mention is we also offer any student to do what we call an individual research project. That can be 1, 2, or 3 credits, depending on the size of the project. And it's a paper that you would write on an environmental topic of your choosing. We have found that students really like to have that option. There may be a semester where you just can't fit in the classwork, but you're really interested in studying a particular issue. Great. You can do a paper on a topic of your choice. Or you may find that topics are flowing out of the classes you're taking, and you want to take a deeper dive and do a paper on that. And we then match you with one of our faculty here at Lewis and Clark to work with you on that paper. So that's always an option in any given semester as a choice. And Whitney, do we have some more questions?
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
so
okay.
Robert asked about the maximum time to complete the MSL, but we could touch on both the length of time for both programs.
Lucy, do you want to grab that?
Yes. Although, Janice, I am trying to remember.
I know it's a great question, Robert.
Years. That's a good question,
3.
Robert.
I believe it's 3.
Thank you, Whitney.
You're welcome.
We do set those kind of guardrails for people. But when there are extenuating circumstances, and there have certainly been a lot over the last couple of years with people's lives, we do extend that. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say we can also answer sort of what's the typical, so it's a great question because people want to know what are the ins and outs. So if you wanted to complete the program in as short amount of time as possible, your life and other obligations allowed you to sort of bulk up, on classes. We've had students complete the program in 3 semesters plus a summer. That would be really kind of cranking up and doing, as many of the credits as you could fit. And the maximum time, as we've noted, is 3 years. Some people do take a leave of absence. They just need to take a semester off because, obligations are particularly busy that time. So we sort of add that onto the time. If you need more time to complete the degree, we try to be pretty flexible. But as Lucy says, they're guardrails just because you don't want to take too long to go through the whole program because it would sort of attenuate it. But we've been able to, so far, work with pretty much every student to do it as quickly or as slowly as they have wanted within our time frame.
Great. And then, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Lucy. Go ahead.
There was another question about whether classes are synchronous or asynchronous or at night, which is a really good question too. So the way our online program is set up is that it is what is called asynchronous. In other words, you can complete the work at any time of day that works for you. You do not have to be online at any certain time. So for example, you will go into the online system, all the discussion questions will be there, all the pre-recorded, very professionally recorded and edited lectures from the professors will be there according to each module for each subject you're covering within the class. And there will be deadlines. So you do have to do it by a certain time, but you don't have to do it at a certain time. So for example, the first week of class, there may be a module, and during that time, you need to watch the lecture, obviously do the readings. Sometimes there's a quiz, sometimes there isn't. And there is almost always discussion questions. And so you will need to spend time then answering those discussion questions, reading what other students have said, responding. Sometimes the professor then jumps in. And what is really amazing and what Janice and I have just been absolutely so pleased with is the depth of those online discussions. We kind of laugh sometimes because in the in-person class, if a professor asks a question, one or maybe two people will answer, but in online, everyone answers. And we're finding that people really spend time thinking and writing really great responses to those discussion prompts. And the depth and the breadth of those online discussions are really amazing, really great interaction between students and with the professors. So I think I answered that question, but if anybody had a follow-up, please go ahead.
And I like April's comment, busy life. Yeah, and April, you would not be alone. Most of our students, have pretty significant obligations. So the nice thing is you're not expected to be at a certain place at a certain time. Which probably sounds good to you as a working mom of three and a busy husband. And so you can listen to the videos, as Lucy said, on your own time within a, window of time. So students, really like that. They can do it first thing in the morning. They can do it at lunch. They can do it at night after the kids go to bed, whatever works. So we understand you are busy and you would not be alone. We also have a question about the cost of the LLM, and the cost is the same for the master's and the LLM. So I'll fold them together. As I mentioned earlier, we charge by the credit as opposed to an overall one semester charge like some other schools do. We have set our tuition at $14.95 per credit, $1,495 per credit. We've set that tuition, it's lower than our in-person tuition because we felt that students on campus are going to get additional services that our online students aren't using, like the gym, all those kinds of things. And so it's $14.95 per credit. And so the total with 26 credits is $38,000 and change. We've tried very hard to keep it under that 40 mark. We know lots of schools, master's programs and LLMs are north of 40,000. We've tried to keep that, under that as long as we can. And I know that still sounds expensive because, you know, it's tuition is expensive. Education is expensive these days. So I do just fall back to the other point that I made, which is we want to make the program accessible as possible. And so if you would like to request a reduction in the tuition, we do offer, and try to be as flexible as we can, we do offer tuition reduction scholarships. So that can bring that cost down to something that generally works, you know, for most folks. Yeah.
Then we have one more from Robert asking about transfer credits.
Oh, great. Lucy, do you want to grab that one? I can too.
Go ahead. I don't see it on my screen.
Do you see it, Janice? I can read it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What is the carryover time for previously taken courses at other universities, both graduate and undergraduate? Asking in relation to previously taken grad courses 8 to 9 years ago.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's a great question. It would depend, and I'll broaden it just to cover other people who may have a similar question. It depends on so we don't accept any transfer credit from programs into this program, but I'll explain another option. So it could be used to take away a required class, and I'll explain that a little bit better. So if, for example, somebody had already taken administrative law or environmental law, either in a grad type of program or in a law school, we wouldn't transfer that credit, but we would then allow you to waive taking those classes again in the current program, so that you can kind of jump into other classes. And in terms of a time frame, again, it would depend on the subject and how much it might have changed. You know, 9 years can be a long time in the environmental field, particularly the last 9 years, where we've had quite a few changes and updates with administrations changing. But I would say generally, you know, within 7 to 9 years is still reasonable, again, depending on the subject matter. But again, it's not so much a matter of us accepting transfer credit. It's us working with you on your individual curriculum to say, wow, you know, you took a class that was really similar to this in your previous grad program. And if it was 10 years ago, we might recommend you take it again just to get a refresher. And we'd look with you at whether the class was similar enough, if it was closer, that you might not have to take, or you might choose to take, you know, other classes. If, you know, the time that we do truly accept transfer credit is if you started an LLM program at another law school. We can accept in that case, because it's an LLM program to an LLM program, it's an even match. We could accept a certain amount of credits from that other law school towards your LLM here. Our general rule is that we have students need to take at least 2/3 of their credits here at Lewis and Clark, but we will accept transfer credits from another program. And we don't quite have the same setup for the master's program, because the master's program is very unique in that it's not being offered by a grad school, it's being offered by a law school. So that makes it a unique master's program. So we don't quite have that one-for-one transfer, but we'd be happy to talk about individual circumstances, of course.
And I know we're right at the hour mark, but we do have one more question. April wanted to know if we've seen any LLM students go on to teach. Yes,
we have quite a few, in fact. we have, just off the top of my head, because I just saw them both, we have one LLM grad who, two of whom I just saw recently teach at law schools. One teaches at the University of Idaho and another teaches at Loyola in Chicago. They both teach environmental law at those schools and credit their LLM with absolutely opening that academic door for them. And we have several others, LLMs, who are teaching in law schools across the country. At least 7 or 8 that I can think of. We also have some LLMs who don't want to teach in law school, but they want to teach environmental law and policy at the college level or grad school level. And we have several LLM grads doing that. So both teaching at a law school, that's an LLM is really great for that, or teaching in other graduate programs.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. We do appreciate your time tonight. Any other questions or thoughts, please feel free to reach out to us via email, phone, whatever it is. We are more than happy to work with you. Again, our application deadline is November 15th, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Whitney, and thanks everyone for being here live or listening to the recording later. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.